Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive,
Yeah.
into something that might seem really basic at first.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about basic English sentence structure.
Oh.
And we're using a video from YouTube from English
Oh.
with Molly.
All right.
And the video is called Basic English Important Lesson.
Important lesson.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, when we say basic English sentence structure, you might be thinking like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
like I got that down.
Right.
But there's actually a lot to unpack here. And it can really affect the way that you communicate.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting is that, like, even in the most simple sentences, there's still room for error.
Yeah.
Like, you can, mess things up.
Yeah.
For example, take subject-verb agreement.
Right.
We kind of all know the basics, right? Like, she takes a singular verb. Those take a plural verb.
Right.
But things get kind of tricky when you're dealing with collective nouns, like team or family. So, for instance, is it the team is winning or the team are winning?
Ooh, yeah, the team is winning.
Right.
Because it's like a single unit, right?
Exactly. And in that case, you'd be correct. But the thing is, you have to consider, are you talking about the individual members of the team?
Right.
Or the unit as a whole?
Okay.
So if you were focusing on the individual players, you would say the team are celebrating their victory.
Oh.
Because you're talking about the multiple people.
So it's like those little hidden ninjas waiting to like trip you up
Exactly.
as you're writing.
Got to be careful.
So how do we avoid these kinds of things?
I think it's really just about awareness.
Okay.
So by just being aware of these nuances, you can actually make conscious choices in your writing.
Okay.
For example, you read something and you're like, yeah, it's grammatically correct, but something just feels off.
Yeah.
That might be because there's like a subject-verb disagreement that's like subtly throwing off the rhythm of the sentence.
That's a great point. Yeah. So it's not just about being correct. It's about using that grammar to actually give you a flow to your work.
Exactly. Yeah. Flow is so important.
All right. So speaking of flow, let's move on to tenses.
Okay.
So in Molly's video, she uses those really simple examples like I am versus I was.
Right.
But how do those like shifts impact, like, let's say, a story that you're writing?
Yeah. Well, imagine you're reading a story and it keeps like jumping back and forth between the past and present tense.
Yeah.
It's going to feel really jarring, right?
Yes.
But when you master those tenses, it ensures that your narrative is moving smoothly through time.
Right.
So your reader can follow along without getting confused.
Yeah.
It's like you're setting the right pace for your story.
So it's like the tempo in music.
Yeah.
Like if you're going too fast, the listener's going to get lost.
Right.
If it's too slow, they're getting bored.
You got to find that sweet spot.
Yeah, you got to find that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Now, you told me that you're learning Spanish, right?
I am. Yeah.
How are those verb conjugations coming?
Oh my gosh, don't even get me started.
Right.
It's a whole other ball game.
But, English has its own set of rules, too.
Yeah.
And even within the rules of English, different verbs behave differently.
Absolutely.
In the video that we're referencing, we see the sentence, he goes.
Right.
Which is a totally different pattern than like he is.
Exactly.
It's amazing how these subtle differences determine how we construct our sentences.
It is, yeah. And that's why it's so important to like pay attention to these basic structures,
Yeah.
Like you need to know which tool you need to use for the job you're doing.
Right.
Whether it's expressing a state of being or you're describing an action or indicating a point in time,
Yeah, it's like having a toolkit, right?
Exactly.
And you got to know which tool to use.
Yeah.
So to sum up, we talked about subject-verb agreement. We talked about the impact of tenses. We talked about how different verbs can behave in different ways.
Right.
This stuff seems simple, but it's not.
It's really not. There are so many layers of complexity.
Yeah, there really are
Yeah.
woven into these like basic building blocks.
Absolutely. And I think the takeaway here for anyone listening is
don't
underestimate the power of these basic structures.
Right.
By just like honing your understanding of them, you can really elevate your writing.
Yeah.
You can avoid making those common mistakes, and you can just communicate with so much more clarity and impact.
That's so true.
Yeah. So pay attention to these structures in everything you read and write.
Yeah.
And I think you'll be surprised at how much you learn.
It's amazing what we take for granted.
I know, right?
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
I'll see you next time.
All right, see ya.
Bye.